Chiefs. 2021, obviously expectations elevated as they are every year for this team. Came in with 12, hit at 12.5. And this really depended because I know there was a lot of 12.5s as well. And so I know there were some people out there who ended up not winning their bets, depending on when you got into that. 8 and 9 ATS. Ugly. You made no money betting on the Chiefs last year. PyTag 2.0, we had them around 10.5, 11 wins. So certainly less than what they ultimately produced. Traditional PyTag had them over 11, so we disagreed there. Mean power rank was about 4. 7-day power rank volatility about 2.5 spots. So pretty low volatility relative to what we've seen. I don't think we have to get too much into it because this is like very well documented. Chiefs started off slow and they came back on.
What I don't think is well documented is how that happened. I think at first the offense was really good and the defense was really terrible. And then the narrative was that the offense kind of struggled and then they turned it back on and they ended up at the same number one in all the analytical categories. They were having horrible turnover luck in the first couple of weeks of the season. And then in those middle weeks, the defense, which was 5th worst in yards per play, was generating the 4th most EPA off turnovers. Right? The defense, as we'll see in the scoring margin over expected, a lot of it came from the defense. They were just generating turnovers. It wasn't this like offensive resurgence. The defense was just generating turnovers and they were winning off the backs of that.
Speaking of the defense, and that clear-cut divide line when they really stepped up, and that 9-1 stretch, they only gave up 14 points or less 6 of those last 10 games. If you're only giving up 14 points with that offense, you're going to take it every single time. So if you look at that 9-1 stretch, it looks great on paper. The offense looks great. The defense looks great. But there are some pretty bad quarterbacks in that stretch. And then Judah said the turnover luck. I remember people talking about it, that the turnover luck in that first 7-8 games was not sustainable for this team. It's going to revert back to the mean, and then they almost had no turnover issues at all after that.
Getting extremely unlucky on offense and extremely lucky on defense, which was an interesting case. And then they stopped getting unlucky on offense and continued getting lucky on defense.
Mm-hmm. I know there was a lot of folks out there patting themselves on the back around, oh, I knew the Chiefs weren't that bad. And I feel like everyone was fighting this straw man. Because I don't know, maybe there was a handful of loudmouths on ESPN or something like that who were saying, you know, the Chiefs are fundamentally different and not good. They're going to miss the playoffs, blah, blah. But I think for the most part, like everyone expected the Chiefs to eventually bounce back. That Patrick Mahomes isn't all of a sudden bad, even if he had some bad games. And also, it's the direction of change, the direction of movement. Like, Patrick Mahomes had an unbelievable start to his career. And so coming off those types of expectations, it's very hard to stay at that level of play, especially as this is a living, breathing league. It adjusts. It's dynamic. It knows the types of things that you're good at, and then teams specifically design and construct their rosters in order to beat you, in order to beat the Chiefs. Like, I made this comparison in the past as well, is like the Warriors had one of those spurts where it's like they were unstoppable, no one could keep up with them, and the league adapted. And then the delta between their edge over the next kind of team shrank.
But I think this is the beauty of the Chiefs organization, which is that they know that. And this is almost going to be to frame how they play in 2022. They're essentially building and gearing themselves up for about 2 to 3 years from now when the Chargers have to pay Herbert. When Russell Wilson's 2 years older, Derek Carr's 2 years older, their cap situations for those teams worsens. And they're essentially saying, we have Andy Reid, we have Patrick Mahomes, we're going to get to the playoffs because we have those two. And like anything can happen in the playoffs. And we're gearing up for 2024, 2025, when our cap situation is friendly and the rest of the division's in cap hell. I think the Chiefs are exactly recognizing that they have to adapt. And this team is not going to look like they did in 2021.
I think Andy Reid is also very well known for, I think some of the narrative changed after he finally did win the Super Bowl. But that it was always, he gets his teams competitive and they're good, but they always choke. And now that's happened, obviously, the past couple of years. The Chiefs have also become, is almost inverted as well, as they're this team that started off slow sometimes, and then, but you could never count out the Chiefs, and they come roaring back in the second half of games and end up winning games that you thought that maybe they weren't going to win. Now they're losing games that you think that they otherwise should have won. And now they're having that Andy Reid choke job down the stretch. And again, the defenses, everyone knows about two-high safety, blah, blah, blah. But that is a form of, again, the league specifically trying to dynamically adjust to the dominant form of play in that league. And then mitigating some of those strengths of that team, like the Chiefs.
I think that's exactly right. Almost the mind of Andy Reid here is the biggest asset the Chiefs have. Might even be more of a bigger asset than Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's adapting, and he's the best at it.
Yeah, I just think that, again, like the league, we don't even know necessarily how the league is going to continue to adjust to this. But again, going back to my parallel with the Warriors, you look at like big men centers now. Like they're almost out of the game unless they could basically shoot threes themselves. And that is like a byproduct of the Warriors, is you cannot be a slow team and beat a team like the Warriors. And the whole league has changed because of it. And I just think the incremental margin of how much better the Chiefs are than the average team has shrunk. But this is accounting for that. You're looking at 12 from last year and now 10.5. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. What do you guys think of, obviously a very controversial topic? I feel like there's people on both sides of this argument. Loss of Tyreek Hill. How does it affect the offense? Does it matter? Is Patrick Mahomes just that good that he just turns anybody and everybody who's out there into not necessarily Tyreek Hill, but more than sufficient to continue to execute the Chiefs' game plan?
Here's my question to both of you. If Tyreek Hill is this important to the offense, why would they let him go then? I think it's massively overblown that Tyreek Hill is a loss. He is a loss, but you have all summer to build a whole new offense without him. I just don't think he's that valuable. And like you said, Judah, I think they're building long-term. But if Tyreek is gone and they let him go, I just don't think it's that big of a blow when they let him go.
I think that's a great point. I think the GM and coaching staff here are in sync. That Andy Reid knows he has to reinvent this offense. What happened last year didn't work. He has to adjust. And I think he said we can do it without Tyreek Hill. And especially not at the cost we're going to have to pay him.
Yeah. Anytime, you're a player and your main strength is your speed is the first thing to go.
What made Tyreek Hill so special is his ability to win deep and also to break 12-yard plays into 70-yard plays, as he did in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
But they shifted his route tree, right? His depth of target moved from like 11 to 7 because what made Tyreek Hill so special at the 11 range just wasn't working. They're playing too high, and they're going to have to adjust. And Tyreek Hill isn't the same player when he's in the 7 range. And it's taking him 15 targets now to get 100 yards when it would take him 7.
Yeah. Now, if you don't have the Tyreek Hill threat, then the defense adjusts.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That's why they signed him. I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
Even if the defense just has to acknowledge him, that's still something for that offense.
There's some really cool data. There's some really cool tracking data that PFF has been working with. That Marquez Valdez-Scantling basically attracts safeties more. And like that exact role that you're describing, Marquez Valdez-Scantling was second best in the league at.
Something in the data there that's like really providing a misleading conclusion.
Possible. Or we're gonna see this year that Marquez Valdez-Scantling's taking the top off defenses, and that helped Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, and it's gonna help Kansas City right now.
I allow for that to be true, but
I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but that is certainly
that's interesting though.
Chiefs.
Yes.
That is certainly in their decision-making process.
Mm-hmm. My view is that Tyreek Hill is a meaningful loss for this team. I feel like everyone is looking at this in isolation, as if it doesn't affect anything else on the team, as it doesn't affect Travis Kelce, as it doesn't affect the running game, as it doesn't affect Patrick Mahomes' decision-making and chemistry. It affects all of those types of things. And then there's other people saying, in the 6 games or the 3 games that Tyreek Hill didn't play, Patrick Mahomes did more than enough without Tyreek Hill. Okay, but now do it through a whole season.
The question I'd ask, is the market not pricing that in already? Is that not baked into the lower win total?
It could be. That's that's what I do come back to is this is a more depressed number, at least. And I think there's a wide variety of factors. So I would say actually this lower number is really a byproduct of just that number, that 1.5 game gap from last year's 12 and this year's 10.5. It's being like taken and allocated to those other teams because they're better, and not necessarily because the Chiefs have actually gotten worse. But in fact, they have. No one's a bigger loser in all of this than the Chiefs. Because I think the whole league is like trying to beat the Chiefs. And so construct their rosters to beat the Chiefs, to mimic the offense of the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Would you bet it? Would either of you guys bet Chiefs to miss playoffs at plus 300?
No.
At plus 300? No.
Plus 300. No.
I just can't. Will they miss a playoff? The only reason why I can think they could miss the playoffs is if somebody gets hurt. And until Mahomes gets hurt or until a bunch of guys get hurt, I just can't get on board.
I would say that if Judah's right about Russell Wilson being better than I think he's going to be, then I think that is even further ammunition. Because like I said earlier, and I totally agree with myself, that if Russell Wilson is vintage Russell Wilson this year, Broncos are going to win the division. As long as like Nathaniel Hackett's not one of the worst coaches in the NFL.
Still have to get through the Chargers. Can I make my bearish case for the Chiefs, which I think is probably my squarest and most narrative-based take I'll ever have? If you look at the conference championship game, it's very out of character. That's why I love it. I just have that like my gut telling me this is gonna.
You got to have some square. You can't just have sharp takes.
You have to have a lot of square. Although that's a very nice compliment.
I got one question on the sharp part. How much of sharpness is just people trying to be different versus actually sharp? I feel like maybe
there's some like super lazy. I'm contrarian.
Yeah, that's when I see, like when I listen to the media, and a lot of media is just bad. They try so hard to be smarter than what they were. I'm like, you need to relax, okay? It's just some of the sharp stuff out there isn't really that sharp. They're just trying to be different.
Square sharp.
Here's my square speculative take. This is a better way of putting it. Okay.
Is it square or square sharp?
It's just speculative. That's all it is. No square, no sharp, nothing. It's just speculative. That in the conference championship game, okay, when the Chiefs didn't score at the end of the first half, they threw that pass to Tyreek Hill in front of the end zone because the offensive coordinator wanted them to throw it. There was a seed of distrust that was sown that day that I don't necessarily know will be repaired, which is that Patrick Mahomes does not trust his offensive coordinator. I think there's a real possibility that Patrick Mahomes is Aaron Rodgers of year one, where he's saying, screw the system. I'm going to do it my way. He gets impatient. He throws into too high when he shouldn't, as opposed to just taking the 5-yard check down, the 6-yard check down. And it's all going to come back to that conference championship game and them not throwing to Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes just not trusting his coaching staff.
There's nothing square about that.
I definitely think that's a good point. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't trust his offense, that's going to ruin a lot of things.
I think that's the exact type of nuanced observation that is the type of stuff that isn't necessarily revealed in data. Okay. So the other thing is too, is like a lot of the things that are being priced in the market, it's under like structured data. All right. And in finance, structured data is like the most worthless data there is, because it's assumed that if you can get it, it's priced in. Doesn't matter how you slice it and dice it. If you can get it and it's pretty effortless, it's worthless. It's priced in. It's only the unstructured data. It's the new stuff. It's the things that isn't on the paper or the otherwise type of data that you basically have to create yourself. And this is the type of thing that I feel like so many people discount. And one of the things like my cousin Zach was always like very good at around handicapping is like the things that aren't happening on the field and the things that is relationships between players and disagreements, because these are human beings still who are doing a job, who are getting paid money, and they like people and they don't like people. And I've actually read other things around where Mahomes wanted the enemy out. And he's still around. He's like, why the heck isn't this guy like going to get in a different job? And that there is conflict there. Now, if that's a seed that can spurt and grow weeds within that offensive scheme, that could be a huge wild card. That's a great point.
It's the first time I've heard it all year. I didn't know about the Bieniemy thing though. I wonder if there's something else to it that we don't. That maybe he does suck, and that's what it is. And it's just, well, he's just. Or if you go to Bieniemy though, he's got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Of course, he's going to look awesome. Maybe he's not doing that much, and maybe he's just going for the ride. I don't know. It was just a lot to take in there. And if Judah is right and he doesn't trust the offense, would Andy Reid step in? Because Mahomes probably trusts Reid. There's no question about that, right? There's no ands, ifs, or buts. But if there's any question, and maybe Mahomes in the back of the head is like, screw this, I'm going to go do my own thing, and maybe he doesn't want to sit in the offense, then you could see the cracks in the team, and then could it amplify? I really don't know.
Also, I love the parallel to LaFleur and Rodgers, because that one was Rodgers was doing his whole pouty season. And as we know, it led people to believe, oh, maybe Aaron Rodgers is washed. You know, then he comes back with back-to-back MVP seasons. And it wasn't that he was washed. He was just being a little bitch. And usually people who are super competitive can get butthurt and maybe things aren't like the organization isn't going in the direction. We know that's exactly what was with Rodgers. Like he wanted like his fingerprints over all the different moves and, oh, you're not consulting me and you're not taking in the things that I want into consideration. And maybe as Mahomes gets a bigger and bigger sense of himself, and he wants to have more of a Brady type approach of where, hey, I want an opinion. I want my opinion to be reflected in the game's decision-making and the play calling and whatnot. And maybe there is like a lot of headbutting with this Bieniemy. And again, I think the market speaks volumes that he hasn't gotten a head coaching job over the last couple of years. It's because the teams are doing their own due diligence, doing a reverse attribution analysis and saying, why are the Chiefs good? The Chiefs are good for this reason. And one of the reasons they're not is because of Eric Bieniemy. Also, Matt Nagy's back.
Yeah, he's back. He got a bad rap in Chicago, but he did make
Chicago.
Yeah, he did make Trubisky look good one year. That's pretty impressive in my opinion.
Nagy was the OC, and he got a job, but Bieniemy can't. And now Nagy's back.
There's a non-zero chance, in my view, that it's almost subconscious. Mahomes is going to play a different style from here on out. He doesn't even necessarily know it. He's going to make a different decision.
Yeah.
Not even by his own choice.
It's the most insidious kind.
Yeah.
It's very hard to correct that then.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't even know.
Yeah. Which is like, what's wrong with Patrick Mahomes? That's it. He's not making the same decisions.
This was awesome. All the great insights crystallizing here at the end after 2 hours. I liked that we disagreed on a lot of stuff as well, because first of all, I love disagreement because that's how it makes you rethink your own arguments to make sure that you're either re-underwriting your view or otherwise modifying it kind of accordingly. And instead of just saying, yeah, I agree. So glad that we had some disagreements on this, but we do very strongly agree on Raiders under. Do you like Raiders under, Dan? You like Raiders under too, because you hate the offensive line.
I hate their offense. I actually hate that whole team in general.
The wide receiver room is terrible.
That's the other thing. Yeah, that's where they're most vulnerable. Yeah.
Which is odd. It's odd for you to say it out loud because everybody's like, "Oh, Devontae Adams is awesome," but like when you say they don't have any depth, they have no depth.
I was almost willing to make the case that in the position groups where they supposedly improve most, they're actually going to have worse production in 2022 than 2021.
Yeah, don't be shy.
That's what I meant to say that.
What you're really saying is Hunter Renfrow season. That's what's going to happen at this rate.
Yeah.
That's a great point, because actually the Raiders ended up using like 6-7 wide receivers last year, but it was because they had really the depth to be able to absorb that one.
Yeah. They used Henry Ruggs, Zay Jones, Brian Edwards. Like, all those guys are like fine receivers. They're not lighting the world on fire. They're not Matt Collins. Matt Collins is terrible. Awesome.